to be back in Mongolia. I'm based now in Philippines, but I used to work in Mongolia for about 3.5 years. So actually, I see many familiar faces today in the room. So the cold weather of Mongolia is no surprise. Now I'm actually representing here IC corporate governance program, actually, which is quite active around the region. The program covers a lot of countries, including China, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, but it also actually a focus to quite significant degree in Mongolia. Today is really the focus of my slides will be a bit to talk about the trends, big global trends which happened, which actually are in the area of corporate governance. Again, an overview to align the national practices of Mongolia, what's going on around the world and actually the region. Again, in terms for Mongolia, right, I think it was been mentioned by the speakers before me about the government's plan, corporate government development plan, which was up to 2011, and there's been some steps actually on its implementation and very positive developments. And there's been other voluntary initiatives to improve the governance in the country. So I think it's good time actually to reflect, to look back and think about what could be done to move governance in Mongolia to the next level. Again, this is another exercise which is unique to Mongolia. Actually, countries around the region actually and globally go through this exercise once in a while. It's always good to do it and actually to reflect about what happened. And I will share actually experience about similar initiatives around the region. Just very briefly, today I think we'll just, and now we have time limitations and we're behind the schedule slightly. So we'll try to go very quickly around what are basically the new requirements which are coming from regulators, investors and companies, on corporate governance improvements, what are again related to global trends, and specifically what are basically implications for increased demand for governance, sustainability and integrated reporting, which is relatively new and actually quite interesting topic. But generally, it's in terms of governance, right? So I think it's quite familiar of governance. There is. If you look at how the governance, the cycle, the improvements are developing, it's around really 3 stages. There is some crisis ongoing, there is some big dispute, there is failure, there is big huge corporate failure, there is some certain movement to address the problems identified and actually to come up with better solutions to this problem. And there is some time when these solutions sometimes seem to work, seem not to work, and companies or others actually find out some of the requirements, and then you have the whole cycle going all over again, right? And if you would notice, actually we have witnessed the cycle actually about 2 or 3 times over the last 12 years. The big scandal of Enron, which happened in 2012, which was very fair to, relatively recent. Still, we had more and more actually instances happening of corporate failures and again increased regulation, more academic analysis. But when all of us, still you have more cases like that. Actually, I think now a bit more on this stage, which has to do with again, I think in kind of gray area, where again in area where there is a tendency to do risk-averse reporting and actually improve the governance practices, but we'll see. Just to reinforce the message today about the governance and its importance. It's the 9th corporate governance forum in Mongolia, and I took part in about 5 corporate governance forums already. So I tried to come up actually with a new slide about why corporate governance is important, and actually some more case studies and actual surveys supporting the fact. And this is just a very recent survey which has been actually developed and published about 2 years ago, which again was done among the 1,000 CEOs of by Accenture in 2013, and again to look at the perspectives of governance and why governance is important for companies in general. And again, this helped to reinforce the message. What governance actually is important for companies, and companies internally see the benefits of improving their own governance practices. And we benefits actually are I mean, various. First of all, it helps to lead to, competitive advantages. It helps to improve the decision making. It helps to improve relationship with shareholders and other stakeholders. Companies still say what, as a result of corporate governance, they are able to get, the cost of capital actually goes down, and they get premium on the shares, and our capital financing. But again, one important note is what the corporate governance needs to be deeply embedded in firms' value and culture. So it's not just policies and procedures what are being adopted, and really, and not just one of the trainings what companies directors have to go, but really they should be. This should be part of company's culture, and that should be really. There should be responsibility at the board level. I mean, measurable goals and timelines, and incentive structures for employees, and along with that, stronger accountability for, for the actions which go beyond the agreed standards. Still, when you look at it internationally, there is. There is a tendency what regulators and investors aren't that satisfied, and actually it comes from, both directions. Some companies actually say what there is too much boilerplate, there is too much regulation. Companies say there is certain reporting fatigue, there is certain fatigue of complying with regulations. And there is actually counter-argument, but despite of the measures taking, certain scandals and unfortunate incidents still take place. On the other hand, there's also a tendency from emerging markets and companies on what there is too little disclosure. Requirements and practices actually are both lacking. Again, there are different ways to deal with these issues. You probably heard about OECD corporate governance principles, new principles which have been adopted about last year, actually exactly 1 year ago, which try to address some of the issues which have been raised, and including the lack of good structures to enforce certain decisions, including the lack of proper mediums to receive shareholder complaints, and also the concerns related to the lack of transparency in terms of governance. Well, it's actually interesting how the governance concept develops over time. The previous OECD principles, adopted in 2004, actually were quite, novel at the time, and tried to address many issues around the governance, which had to do with rights of shareholders, rights of, obligations of a board, accountability of boards. The standards introduced the role of stakeholders in corporate governance. It's interesting. What the new version of standards released a year ago actually enforce always messages, but there are actually now new elements which actually fit into the picture. As before, there are now 6 principles of OECD corporate governance principles, but the principles actually focus changed. The framework, the substantive requirements from, the previous version of OECD, CG principles have remained, but new messages actually are quite important, and try to address these issues raised. For example, one of the underlying principles of corporate governance in terms of OECD is the existence of effective and strong framework. There is actually now tendency, and OECD recognize it, but there is a weak enforcement and supervision. New framework requires for stronger supervision, stronger enforcement, and actually puts more focus on stock markets and actually intermediates in stock markets on enforcing the corporate governance standards. On terms of shareholder rights, principles state, although the principles were somewhat combined and made maybe a bit more concise, but the focus actually on shareholder rights has to do with a lot more with developing new IT procedures on voting at shareholder meetings, we focus on decision about executive remuneration, and actually the role of shareholders and protection of interests of shareholders during related party transactions. Some of it is relevant for Mongolia, some of it maybe not relevant for Mongolia. One of the very big development is the role of institutional investors, right? I think that's been mentioned today. Just to be sure what institutional investors are, these are investors who act in fiduciary capacity, right, representing interests of our stakeholders, their own principles. It can be mutual funds, it can be pension funds, and ours. But when it comes to institutional stakeholders, institutional investors, actually, the role of our parties, including the intermediaries at the markets, has also been recognized. And that again helps that addresses the roles of rating agencies, investment advisors, and others, which actually have a great role to play. Basically, there is a need on sound economic incentives throughout this whole institutional investor chain, focusing really on institutional investors acting in their best interest of the ultimate shareholders. Again, that has to do with disclosure of their governance practices and actually active implementation of how they act on these policies on voting, actually on director nomination. The role of stakeholders is again reinforced, but focus on stakeholders actually moved a bit towards giving them a lot more information about company activities. In terms of disclosure, I think that's very important. Again, to today's topic of today's conference, the disclosure again focuses on disclosure of risk. Disclosure of sustainable reporting, which again have to do not with historic performance of the company, but actually what's going to happen to a company in the future. So this whole paradigm of report actually shifts quite significantly. And role of a board, role of a board is reinforced. The board should be the central pillar of corporate governance, but there are other ways actually which could help the board to move to a level beyond the levels we are currently at. And the boards actually should pay more attention to risk management. Very interesting development. Boards should also be involved in tax planning and really oversight of companies' activities through better management of internal audit activities. To enforce these activities, these roles of a board, there should be appropriate board training and evaluation, and boards really should pay more attention on establishment of specialized board committees, especially on risk management, internal audit, and remuneration. Previous principles had these statements to a certain degree, but they were not explicitly stated. And actually, when you look at the reasons why you have all these elements under corporate governance principles, so it's again trying to address the issues actually which everybody witnessed happening over the past 10 years, especially when it comes to role institutional investors. Everybody saw, despite what's being said about institutional investors, their role, the stakes what they hold at companies, they play very little role in how the governance actually in governance of companies which we own. And role of a board, also quite important. The boards, everybody understands the boards are important, but it's apparent that boards sometimes are not up to the task, up to their task. It's interesting actually in terms of board. We was recently studied by, AIC on what the governance practices are. Again, to talk about this, to support the slide which was one before this. And it turned out that actually when it comes to performance of companies, actually the board, and especially board composition, plays a significant role. In that regard, we also the role of independent directors, and actually having appropriate independent directors on the board helps to decrease the risk of fraud and misappropriation of assets. Again, that's something which everybody thinks is logical, but it took time to collect evidence and actually support the case. And why it's important? Because, for example, I come from Philippines, and there was a very interesting case about 5-6 months ago. I won't name a person, but he's a very powerful man. He heads about 5 or 6 largest corporations in Philippines, and we actually sat on one panel together about almost, I mean 5-6 months ago, and one of the first things what he says when we start, conference, he said, actually, I'm not convinced what corporate governance really works. Is there any case study? Is there anything to support it? So actually, it was good that we actually had some of our case studies available to show. Although I feel he wasn't really that convinced. Just very briefly, on terms of why we demand for better governance. It's what a lot of corporate governance is evolving field, and you see what many of the requirements and better practices which you have now in OECD and our standards are actually being quite widespread, and you see that actually internationally. You see a lot of codes and code requirements being adopted. Actually, very interesting development. Right now, we in IFC in the region, we're actually involved in about 4 corporate governance codes. One code in the Philippines, which is being drafted and which hopefully will be released by end of November. There's another code which is being drafted and hopefully released soon in Indonesia. There is code work in Vietnam, and there is actually big work on development of first corporate governance codes in China. There is actually, you see a lot of tighter regulation, and also you have to be quite careful here. Any regulation, any requirements have to be pragmatic, right? It's not to overburden the companies, but actually come up with solutions which really try to address the problems faced by the companies, and that can be specific to countries and markets, and we'll address that a bit later. You have more sophisticated investors, and these investors really try, come up with more requirements for companies and only governments, and how they should really, what practices should be addressing. And again, there is a global financial crisis. And with lessons learned, and actually academic evidence which helps to convince the owners of businesses and management what this actually will benefit the companies in long term. Just about some of the problems, when we speak about the regulations and need to improve the regulations, for example, again, that have to be country specific, really. And here are some of the problems which, again, countries face in terms of governance, and that really is very different depending on stage of economy. In advanced, more advanced, and developed markets, we currently actually focuses a lot on executive remuneration, board composition, in terms of independence of directors. It's about investor activism, which have to do with the role of minority investors and actually shareholder activist groups. It's fiduciary duty to shareholders. It has to do with multinational listed companies, issues of dual listing, cross-border voting, etc. Some of the issues are not actually, are not evident in emerging markets. Emerging markets, again, the focus still is on regulations of RPTs, and RPTs, especially in Asia, due to the ownership structures in Asia, is, great impediment to good corporate governance practices. There is issue of competence of directors, not so much, I would say, even issue of independence, but competence. Finding good competent directors in emerging markets is always a challenge. State intervention and the role of state intervention, in particular also state-owned companies, where you see what even state-owned companies really don't follow good practices. Although ideally state should lead by example. You see a lot of non-market mechanisms in terms of information disclosure, in terms of trading of shares, in terms of decision making. And there are also gaps in terms of, enforcement. Really, enforcement is very weak in emerging markets. And why it's important? Enforcement is important. Well, even when it comes to some other initiatives like voluntary documents or voluntary initiatives, having good enforcement mechanisms. Although there might be some voluntary initiatives in place, is quite important. Just an example, a corporate governance code, right? You have many times codes which are called comply or explain, which basically are not binding for companies. Companies don't have to comply with provisions of a code. They just have to explain what their practices are. and I mean explain why we actually chose to deviate from the practice. It's perfectly fine if companies chose not to adhere to certain principles, for example, in terms of establishment of committees. Like the company may decide we don't need to have a risk committee of a board because this is a small company. Our audit committee is quite effective in dealing with it. But it seems what Comply and Explain really works in the companies, in the countries where you have effective enforcement mechanisms. Although it seems voluntary document, the company should just maybe announce the results of the state of governance in the annual report. It's not quite evident, and I'm sorry to say, but Mongolia maybe it kind of falls in that league. There is a Comply and Explain code which has been adopted about 2 years ago, but that Comply and Explain unfortunately doesn't quite work in practice, and maybe it has to do with issue of adequate enforcement. Just about, on regional trends, right? Because I think that has to do with a few more, conference today about what's done. Regionally, there is again tendency now around the region to try to address all these issues, and especially focusing on company performance, compliance, and application of rules, board functions, and composition, accounting, risk, and controls. And again, we in the region are involved actually in a number of countries. In the Philippines, we have quite heavy engagements, and although the problems are different from problems faced by companies in Mongolia, the many factors actually under broad categories remain. These issues also we've been witnessing in countries like China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Mongolia is not unique. The problems identified, we try to deal and try to address through adoption of corporate governance codes. Having more rigorous listing requirements. Then we have also requirements to disclose only, and with varying degrees we try to apply them in different countries. For example, in Philippines, where I work currently, we started with developing with Stock and Exchange Commission the annual corporate governance report. So in addition to annual report, financial statements, analysis of risk, companies prepared a separate report which is based on a template, and they describe the actual corporate governance practices. So they only disclose what was actually happening in the companies. That was the first original step. Now in Philippines, we try to go to the next step with more substantive corporate governance code, which actually will be then incorporated into the listing requirement of a stock exchange. Again, this is a lengthy process. It doesn't happen overnight, but this is really interesting to take how this can happen. And here are just some benefits which companies can enjoy from doing it. And this again, regions, some experience, some recent really examples from region. You have some recent example in Korea, which we tried to strengthen the role boards by having more rules on director on board composition and having independent directors. There were also some rules on group affiliated companies and actually intra-company dealings, and this basically helped to improve the companies. This came in tangible benefits in actually Korea, which helped to improve the performance of companies at least at the stock exchange. We had a recent experience in India, where basically now companies are now required to have an audit committee. There was an requirement, but was not strictly enforced. But there is a requirement to have independent directors, also a minimum, which goes around 30-40%. And as this endowment, based on kind of feedback from companies, it seems that it really helped the companies to gain access to external financing, and it raised a certain level of trust to companies by investors, local and foreign. We have some experience in China. For China, it's a special case, and we discovered more and more as we actually try to work on a corporate governance code in China these days. But there was some decisions really, especially on by stock exchanges, to remove non-traded shares from companies. Actually, there was such a practice. But in addition to listed shares, there were non-traded shares of companies, and actually that affected the whole decision-making and voting power arrangements in companies. There was actually introduced mandatory cumulative voting, and as a result, basically the benefits which came to companies was actually more protection from maybe being overtaken, actually, and less state intervention in companies which are seen to appear run. The list is not exclusive. We have more and more examples, and again in Philippines, from another example, based on the annual corporate governance report, which has been, developed, and basically better requirements which have been introduced. There was an initiative called ASEAN Corporate Governance Corp that basically tries to assess the governance of practice around countries in ASEAN, including Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Philippines. And last year, actually, Filipino companies were second in the region. We were passed only by companies from Thailand. So actually, Philippines did better than Singapore in terms of how many companies actually were rated as having actually exemplary corporate governance practices compared to others. The corporate governance in Mongolia, I think it was kind of covered briefly by Sendayush, so I won't talk about it too much. This is really taken from the survey which we did 3 years ago. And the problems which we noticed at the time, which in corporate governance, really a lot had to do with poor and inaccurate financial reporting, related party transactions, and board share transactions were not transparent. It was, unfortunately, the case with non-compliance rules and procedures. And policies were not up to were not at an adequate level. The shareholder treatment was quite poor, and maybe that had to do with concentration of shareholdings in the company. And board competence needs to be improved. So not even the composition, actually, the competence was the major focus during that time. Hopefully, these and other problems can be addressed. What we actually try to do is, in addition to having mandatory rules and requirements, actually, we focus a lot on having companies basically voluntarily to improve their practices, in particular, which comes to performance and strategy, risk management, remuneration, RPTs, and protection of shareholder rights, the whole ownership attitude by them. I think what's important for Mongolia, just for future, is to focus again on company performance. Basically, the standards should reinforce the company performance, which ultimately helps to bring value to company shareholders and company stakeholders. There should be alignment between local standards and international standards, of course, taking into account the specifics of the country and its economy. The corporate governance, again, should be seen as a way to enhance the competitiveness of the country as a whole. Because, there's kind of, the framework of this presentation doesn't allow it, but when you have good corporate governance practices, it helps to boost the financial markets, it helps to boost and build trust and make financial sector, banking sector in particular, less volatile. It ultimately helps to improve the trust to companies, actually. And another way, basically, it helps to better function of the local financial and capital markets, and ultimately helps to help the country's development. I know very briefly. I won't focus on too much, but again, focus a lot on these days is also on disclosure. So why you see this attitude? Basically, the idea is, again, this is through voluntary means. That again has to do with trying to address the company governance from our way. If companies disclose more and more, basically, that it ultimately helps investors and our stakeholders to make decisions whether or not to engage with a company, because it has to do with to take into account several factors. One is, companies going to exist in the market for a long time. Is it sustainable or not? Secondly, also the focus is also on the company's based on the demands from investors, the companies may do apply a lot of advanced practices voluntarily. But once they disclose that information, everybody sees what the governance practices are. Basically based on the demands of investors. They also change the actual practices. Also, what disclosure is good in another regard. When you have company disclosing its practices, its risk analysis, analyzing its risk approach, analyzing its own financial kind of data, it helps for better decision making within the company. So that ultimately also helps to really help the company's overall performance. For focus again on the governance, a lot these days, it's not only on financial performance. The recent emphasis a lot has to do with, disclosing practices on remuneration, ownership, strategy and sustainability. Really, this whole idea of sustainable reporting, I mean, which there are several standards which have been already quite advanced and exist around for like over 20 years, including GRI, ASB, and others. There are free frameworks at the time. Really try to to help investors to learn more about what's happening with companies through through preparation and dissemination of additional reports. Yeah, and there are different initiatives which have to do with, which have basically tried to reinforce the message. This is actually becoming more and more widespread. It's since 2012, the companies, I mean, when you look at, there was a survey done by GRI recently again, they surveyed the companies, largest companies, and actually they saw what the strategy of, for example, disclosure and deliberation, annual reports, and in the disclosures by the company went up from 12% to up to about 64% in about 2015. Right. So that's in short. And I think we'll have also the panel session now. Actually, we'll try to maybe to address some of the issues during the panel session. I mean, I'm almost run out of time. Thank you.